Hey everybody, welcome Lead Wisco again here with my good friend Ryan Kibbe.
Hey Troy.
How are you, buddy?
Good to be here again.
And I like your sweater.
I dressed up just for you.
Yeah, I'm a little bit summery right now, pretty much because I'm just going to embrace.
I can feel the conflict.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah. Here in
you're thinking
Wisconsin,
summer, I'm thinking winter, you know.
Yeah, but here in Wisconsin, once it gets above 32, it's like spring is here.
He's not a summer guy, though. We were talking about that.
Yeah.
We need to convert you.
So today we're excited. I'm excited, actually. And Ryan, you really don't know this new guy that I'm bringing in, but he's a
Love
good
his
friend.
accent, though.
Yeah, and you're going to hear that in a minute. But I love doing life with this guy. We met in, we think, about 2003. He was doing youth ministry, and his name's Rob Murray. He's very accomplished. He's working on his transformational leadership doctorate. He still does work with Westfall Industries or Westfall Speakers, and they do huge events throughout the country. But probably, well, I love this guy. He's a family guy. He's a great husband. He's got 4 kids. But his work on the inner part of our leadership that expresses itself outwardly is what I was just jealous to get him in here. And so he's doing some work with our staff, and I thought I'd share him today.
Yeah,
so
looking forward to it.
Without further ado, Rob, welcome.
Oh, thank you, Troy. Thanks for having me.
Rob.
So great to meet you both.
Yeah.
Troy, I just met you, right?
Yeah, he just met me, yeah.
Since 2003.
So Rob was doing youth ministry, right? And he asked for some help from my wife and I to do a retreat with him. And one of the things that I've loved about just the journey with Rob, he's here today, last day and a half, investing in our staff in transformational leadership. Okay, how many years later, since 2003, I was doing that with you for your team, and now he's doing it for my team. And I just think that's just a beautiful picture of leader formation. You know, what we pour into, we get back. But Rob, I just want you to catch us up to who are you and why are you doing this transformational work? You're about to get your doctorate, and I've talked to you a lot about that. But tell us why. What are some of the events in your life that have shaped why you're doing what you're doing today, and it's influenced who you are today? So kind of dive in. We'll chime in when we need to. We'll stop you at an hour.
Gosh, that's a big question. I think I'll start with saying this. Most of us become passionate about things that are important to us.
Yeah.
If you care about something, chances are that what you care about in life, leadership, friendships, how you express yourself, how you give money, or what you give money to is typically tied to parts of your story. And so I'll tell you what, I'm in the world of transformational leadership, which is studying change. And there's something about change that I love, and probably because it's something that I've needed my whole life, I've wanted my whole life, and I've wanted it for myself.
Yeah.
And so part of what's got me into the world that I'm in is by paying attention to who I am and how I want to express myself in the world. And then we have a saying in our line of work, which is it's very hard to give someone else something you don't have yet for yourself.
So true.
Yeah.
Right? So we love to get on a stage, we love to talk and teach. And so often people are really smart, but they're delivering information rather than the information that's gone through the experiential components of who they are.
Yeah.
And so I am realizing in the world of change and who I am and who I'm becoming is someone who is trying to learn how to embody transformation, which is terrible because I wish I could just get on a stage and teach you about it. But instead, I'm having to do my own work. And so we have another saying, which is never stop doing your work. And so I Jack, myself, and some other change practitioners, we do our work. It's painful. It's painful to do my work. And so even as I sit here today, as I said that, I realized, oh gosh, I've got to call so-and-so and so-and-so to help me in certain areas of my life because I've got to go do the hard work. Because if I'm going to tell you how to navigate a challenge, and I don't even want to tell you how to navigate a challenge, I want to be with you in your challenge and be able to have the attention to explore all the avenues that you're going to need to lean into that. I've got to be able to be okay in my own life to some degree. Yeah. So anyway, I showed up to this work because I realized I wanted change for myself. There were some things in my story that weren't what I wanted.
So you're born in South Africa.
I was.
So
I was born a young boy.
You're born.
Yeah.
And I know.
Nice. In the womb, right?
Yeah, there you go. But your story, obviously, with you know, our family of origin stories tend to shape us. So maybe fast forward us, because that had an effect in your marriage. And there are a couple key events, I think, that unfolded for you that you kind of knew it was there, but these really, I think, catapulted you into your work.
Yeah, you know, I've been married for a while. We have 4 kids, Natalie and I, and I think I was probably, how old am I now? 41. I think I was probably around 36 years old, and Natalie said to me, you know, she's an American, so I came to America to get married and get the green card and stuff like that.
Did that work?
Yeah. Kidding. So I chased Natalie down to America, and I just in my early 20s and mid 20s, and so now we've living some life, and now all of a sudden I'm 37 years old, and Natalie says she wants to speak. She's like, I want to talk to you about something. So I'm like, sounds good, get it out. Like, what are you gonna say? and it was the kind of like, I want to talk to you, where you're like, wait, I think this is. She's like, no, I really need the right kind of space. So you're like, oh gosh,
One of those.
yeah, exactly, one of those. So anyway, long story short is I managed to delay it for a while, and then at some point realized, okay, I need to create the space. I said, all right, what is it? And I'm paraphrasing it, and I'm summarizing it, but I hope you can hear yourself in this, in a relationship you're in with your spouse or with a friend or with your children or whatever it is. But she sat me down on the bed, and I'm 37 years old, and she says this. She says, Rob, you're a good husband. You're a great dad. You provide so well for us. I love the life that we've created. I'm like, oh, this is amazing. Good talk.
Until the hammer.
Yeah, and it's like, but. And then she says these words, which probably came out in different ways, but they were essentially, but I'm lonely with you. It's lonely for me to be married to you. So there's this moment of like, I wish I'd handled it as gracefully, but it made me very afraid. Are you rejecting me, abandoning me? What could happen? But in the midst of what she was really saying was, wow, you're a great provider, which many of us try to project as this is valuable, and it is. You take care of us. You make a good home. You do all this stuff, but I'm lonely with you. And what my wife was really saying at the time, which I didn't realize until maybe more years later as I started to do my work, was she was actually saying a good thing. She was saying, I want more with you than what I'm having. And I want to be courageous enough to express to you the fact that I want more connection. Okay. What would have been the consequences if she didn't have the courage to tell me she was lonely with me?
Right.
She would have apathetically withdrawn from me and disconnected. And then I would have been left with the reality that we have a more disconnected, detached marriage. So her gift of loneliness was the call to connection. And I responded to that call. So I was like, oh gosh. And the challenge was, I showed up to a counseling office. I'd never been into one because counseling is for like people that are messed up, right? So
I've been up a lot.
Yeah, yeah. So you know, I just figured I'd show up to get some help and figure out. I don't even know what help is. And long story long, I go, man. I show up to Jeff and I go, so my wife's lonely with me, and what I'm paraphrasing again, and I'm over-exaggerating, but it's really the gist of this, is I go, all right, give me some tips and tricks, give me some tools, tell me how to fix myself. I want to go back and make sure I'm a good husband. And he's like, yeah, no, that's...
Fix me in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
After a lifetime of issues. Yeah.
Prescribe me a book, send me to a seminar, you know, give me a conference to go to, and we'll do it. So I wanted tips and tricks to fix the behaviors that were causing the outcomes, which was loneliness in our marriage. And unfortunately, that didn't happen so well. So he prescribed he didn't prescribe. He painted another picture. And it was this idea of opening the sewer drain of your life. And he said, Rob, I love this. Jeff said, Rob, you can't give your wife what you don't have for yourself. Your wife is lonely with you because you're lonely with yourself. And I was. And so he said the idea was to go back into your life and find the parts and pieces of who you were. And he goes, you got to climb in there and you got to face them. And he got done. It was a great speech. And I was like, no. Like, I'm just sitting there for a consult, right? And I was like, nah, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And it wasn't this aggressive, but he said, I get it. I wouldn't do it either. Go take another lap. I'll see you in 5 years.
Boom.
Mic drop. He didn't have a mic.
Right.
But he would have dropped it. And really what he was saying was, you're young enough, you're smart enough, you're driven enough, you have enough in you to medicate and manage what's going on. You could probably re-up your coping mechanisms, and you'll probably figure something out in your head or with your body and go out and take it. But I'll see you in 5 years when the wheels come off again. And I sat back in my chair, and he didn't say this, but I heard it. I just hope your wife and kids are still there.
Oh,
Wow.
He didn't say that. I heard that. And that was the moment where it was like, oh, that was the mic drop. And I just realized that I needed to go on a journey. And he said one last thing that I want to say, because it was real important. I was definitely not excited about the idea. And he leaned in and he said, I'll go with you. I'll go with you. And what I didn't realize is so often we go through life needing deep change and transformation, and we think we have to go at it alone. And sometimes we just need a guide, not to fix us, to pretend it's all okay. They just need to stay with us and walk with us. And I was like, okay, let's do this. So that was a moment that shifted in me to say, I need change for myself. And that's one story.
That's propellant.
And you said yes.
I said yes, and I wish it had been a book. I wish it had been a seminar. I wish it had been a conference, but it wasn't. I said yes to 3 to 5 months of deep diving into my life and story so that I could go back and capture myself. Because if my wife was lonely and all I was going to do was figure out what my wife needs to not be lonely, she wasn't going to get me. She was going to get me on performance. So I had to go back and figure out who I was. So when I walked in the room, I could have my own presence within the context of the presence of God, that the presence of God could be embodied through me. So when I walk in, it's like, it's Rob, the Rob that God created before the world got involved. And then my wife can have that version for the good and the bad, but at least she's getting me. She may not like all of me, but she can get me, not me on show.
Right.
And so I had to go do that and decide whether I wanted that. And it's a very, very terrifying job to recover
You push
that.
through the pain instead of running from it.
Pain and fear, probably terror. You know, there's parts of our lives we want to unsee. We don't want to see it. I always say denial is the best drug in the world. It's like, gosh, if I don't have to see it, I don't have to feel it, and I don't have to face it. So it didn't really happen.
What would you say then was the defining moment that you put your life stamp on the message? Obviously, it came out of that pain, but what was the turning point there?
That's just such a big question. I think I have several turning points. One of them was Jeff. Another one was a gentleman called Jack. One of them has actually been Troy over here. I've had several older gentlemen that have said to me, I'll go with you. I'll stay with you. And I think it takes a few times for us to hear something to start to finally believe it. If I tell you you're amazing today, do you believe me?
I do, actually.
Okay, that's concerning.
But not once upon a time. But once upon a time, I thought I was the opposite of that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you are starting to embody the fact that there's parts about who you are that are amazing and are incredible. The fact that I believe that about you is yet to be proven or trusted because we're still meeting each other. So you could be unclear of my motive. But if I say you're amazing and then he says you're amazing and then someone else says you're amazing, you're like, okay, there must be something to this. So I always say I had to hear it a few times. I needed a few people sent from God to say, God Emmanuel in the flesh, I'll stay with you and I'll go with you. So those were turning points that helped me realize life is hard. The presence of God will go with you, and God chooses to embody himself through the community of believers that he brings around us.
So you created, in a sense, a culture or an ecosystem to reinforce who you really were.
Yeah. And I don't think I set out to do that because I was so smart. I set out to do it because I was desperate. I was afraid. I was nervous. I was hurting. I was worried because here's my wife. Again, pain is a great motivator, not intelligence. I learn things just for fun, but I really learn things when I'm really afraid.
Yeah. Most of my life change has been that.
Has
pain.
it?
Pain pushes me into a change. Yeah.
Wow.
I'd like to say I just think about it all the time.
Yeah.
Not true. Pain.
Yes.
Great teacher.
Yes.
Which is a gift.
It is a gift.
Yeah.
Pain becomes a gift. So let's go this direction. Our leadership culture is about, that's probably the most common topic on the bookshelf today. Leadership, tactics, knowledge, awareness, systems, stuff we could just plug and play and go do. And so as you've talked about the quadrants, it's all mind and strength, right? Why doesn't that work? Why doesn't that, isn't that just enough? Because aren't people making a lot of money and producing a lot of things? Help convince me and maybe the watchers and listeners, why go do work on my father that was never there, or a mom that didn't care? Why is that important?
Yeah. I'm going to take it back to the great commandment. I'm going to simplify it. And I think when God said to love us with heart, soul, mind, and strength, I've got to wonder, why would he say that? Why would God say, love me with heart, with soul, with mind, and strength? And so if you take those 4 dimensions of being a human being, heart, soul, mind, strength, what if it's not just us picking our favorites? Ooh, I like theology, mind. Oh, I love God as Father, the love of God, and just let it wash over me, heart. Maybe it's more sacramental and it's about the reverence of God. Ooh, soul, I'm a soul person. Or maybe it's, you know what, we have to be the hands and feet of Christ. Let's go out and do something, strength. Okay, what if it's all of it? I think so often we play to our bias, or we play to somehow the things we feel most comfortable with. And I'll say that what's happened in the leadership culture, or even in the church culture, and so often we find ourselves guilty of making our favorite dimensions of God's love and God's design, we try to make it the whole meal. And so some of the great leaders that I'm around are those that there are some men and women in the leadership industry that are tactical and can execute and operate in ways that I just cannot even imagine. I read their books, I read their strategies, I go to the conferences, I listen and I learn, and it's like, wow, this is good. It's a very great mind concept. But then I can also, what's so lacking so often, and it's there, but you have to look harder, are the dimensions of heart and soul in leadership have been so overlooked. And so I'm in the marketplace, and often the business world is all about strategic execution.
Yeah.
Outcome-based.
It's all about outcomes.
Performance.
Now I'm okay with that because it's a company, and if you don't have profit, you don't have a business.
Right.
Okay, then you have to become maybe a non-profit or a non-existent business. So the purpose of the organization has a mission to deliver an outcome. But if you neglect the heart and the soul, everyone talks about how good healthy culture is. Okay, you can't strategically execute culture. Culture is people, it's values, it's the compulsions that drive us, it's the sensations and feelings you have when you walk in the door of an organization that exists to deliver outcomes, but you don't do it because people are computers or they're not deliverables. They're human beings that do have a job to deliver, but we're going to treat them like human beings. So we're going to consider them, so forth. So all I'm saying is the work that I have done and got more and more compelled with is going below the line into heart and soul. Not to say it's better, but I overemphasize it, and I always use this, and I never go to the gym, but it's like legs day at the gym. It's they're the biggest muscles in your body, and most guys are working on their biceps. It's like the things you can see and you notice. But the legs hold up the whole body, and there's the core of who you are, core work, legs work. And I'm just saying the heart and soul are the insides of who we are. So how do we focus our leadership not just on mind, not just on strength, not just on heart, not just on soul, but we start to become an integrated leader who considers all 4?
Don't we get too touchy-feely, Rob? And I'm baiting you because I know where you're going to head, but I think it's an interesting thought. I don't have room for feelings, or I don't have room for, they don't need to affect my my execution of my role. Why is that false?
I don't think it's false. I think it's just limited. I think if you isolate and pick and elevate any of the 4 dimensions of how God has told you to love him, I think you are limiting yourself into the holistic, integrated, complete package of the way you were designed. So if you are an organization that chooses, I don't really care how you feel, get your job done, you will starve some of the lifeblood that feeds the very people you're expecting to deliver. It's like having people do your work, but you don't want to feed them. Now, it may not be your job to you're not their therapist, but you have to have a culture where people are allowed to have feelings.
Why?
Because you don't want sociopaths or psychopaths. And yet we have a society we're so afraid of having feelings because we don't have a language to interpret feelings. Have you ever walked into a room and you know someone's feeling a lot and you're like, oh gosh, oh gosh. You can tell it's like stirring. Okay. Right. Do you have a little bit of fear about where they are and what do I do with them? How do I manage them? Okay. What do you want to do? Like to bring peace in the room again. What do you want to do?
You want to stop them from feeling that.
Want to stop.
Yeah.
You want to somehow quell it, diminish it. Okay. And what happens is when you take something that's real about you and you just put it away in a closet. Now we're trying to have a meeting and there's someone in the closet like screaming. And once in a while I have to go over there and bang the door and throw some food in there to keep them quiet. Or I can look at you and go, wow, you look like there's a lot going on. How are you feeling? Mm-hmm. So I start with feelings because they're so loud and obnoxious in the moment. And I'm not worried about them. And you go, I'm really afraid and I'm really angry. Thanks for sharing. Welcome to Earth.
And you've said before, which I think is so interesting, we tend to be, I think, falsely informed and make the assumption we think first to change our behavior and our world and our context. And yet I think you're the one who made me aware, and I don't know where you got that, Rob, but we feel first.
I was talking to a gentleman called Chip Dodd last week. Him and I were meeting, and Chip said to me, because Chip does a lot of work in the feelings world, Chip and I were talking about neuroscience, brain, how the brain's formed. And Chip was saying, he was reminding me this concept that we so often think that our feelings follow our thoughts. But in fact, neuroscience will tell you that your thoughts follow your feelings. Okay, all I'm telling you is your mind responds to your heart. Okay, so who cares? Okay, well, where neuroscience would go with it is they'll say when a child is born, the limbic system part of their brain is almost fully developed. But it takes up into your early 20s for your frontal lobe to develop. That's like your CEO, the rational brain. So think about this for a second. You wake up feeling, smelling, touching, tasting, sensing, and the problem is you can't interpret the results. The interpreter hasn't arrived yet. Then the frontal lobe starts to grow and starts to say, ooh, you're afraid. This environment's unsafe. So, and then eventually, so your thoughts catch up to what's going on inside of you. Why is that a big deal? Because it typically means that by the time you formulated a thought, you've already had the feelings. But if you don't know you had the feelings, your thoughts are typically going to be a little less integrated to make the best leadership decision, the best relational decision. So when my wife told me that she was lonely with me, if I went immediately to my brain to fix her, I would be doing that because I realized I was afraid. Man, I'm so afraid. Your loneliness means I'm afraid. What am I afraid of? Are you going to leave me? Because people leave me. So then you
had a life narrative,
and then my narrative, which is deep inside of me, starts to inform the way that I think and strategize, and then execute. So then my behavior to shut her down is to make her stop so that she won't leave me. But the fear was, you're going to leave me, and that informed everything else that followed.
But you leaned into the emotion of what she was feeling, and that's where things begin to shift.
Yes, in theory. My wife will say on that day that it wasn't that clean and concise.
It never is.
I have eloquently massaged the narrative.
Yeah.
Yeah, well.
But you took steps.
Yeah, you took steps. I think.
That was the sewer drain. I was like, give me the tips and tricks. There is nothing.
But I like to hear the sewer drain because we all have them.
Correct.
At times.
And there's nothing wrong with tips and tricks. And not all leadership work is tips and tricks. There's a lot of great strategies. Mind and Strength has great strategies. All I'm saying is even the heart and soul strategies need to be integrated so that we are now whole humans doing the best we can.
Yeah, it just seems like we don't get a lot of permission, I'm going to say both church and in business sectors, to integrate heart and soul.
Emotional intelligence, they talk about this.
Correct. That's the problem. They talk about it.
Right.
But do you embrace it?
Right.
Embrace and practice it.
Well, and to your point, unless I'm doing that work, how can I pass on to something that I'm not doing?
If you don't have emotional intelligence.
Right. So part of the work I've been doing, and that's with Rob and Jack, and even before that, is how my story has affected my leadership. And so I grew up with a father that was hardly at home, was a wild man, was involved in a lot of illegal activity, and I'm doing the best I can to honor him. He's gone now, last couple of years, but I was convinced and believed the lie about myself that if I didn't I didn't do anything that wowed him, and I had to make sure I didn't do anything wrong. If I did something wrong, I get his attention, and if I didn't wow him. So otherwise he was not there. And so, man, I was hungry for attention, but I also grew up really chaotic, which made me say, I better get ahead of every situation. I better be loud in the room. I better wow people. And I better control this situation so it doesn't get chaotic.
That was your life commandment, that life narrative that just kept playing over.
Well, right. It's this early, and I don't think I felt like you could run away from, I'm just going to be opposite of my dad. And I don't think, I'm still uncovering layers. And I think Rob, you know, I'm in a group with Rob, and one of the conversations was, I never check in with the feeling of fear. It's always anger.
Oh, wow.
But I realized, because my definition probably, I'd say 6 months, 8 months ago was, well, fear is you're stuck and you won't move. Like, I thought it was an activity, not an emotion. So I think to then be discovering, oh, wait, I'm only saying I don't have fear because I'm willing just to go, like, I'm just going to do it. So if I said I had a fear of heights, which I do, I'll still go jump in the lake at an 85-foot cliff. I'm afraid, but I'm never going to tell you that. And I'll say I don't have fear because I just did it. And yet I realized what I was giving to my staff was an intensity and anger, which was really around, I was afraid. And so I'm learning how to check in with my staff as a leader to go, God, I'm feeling some fear that people won't come back after COVID. And I'm feeling really intense right now and angry and passionate about getting them back. So I don't want you to think I'm angry at you, but that's what it feels like. Isn't it interesting how all that, and I want to control the situation and the chaos. So story does inform our leadership in both sectors, in faith and in the business sector. Yeah.
Well, and you just described something, Troy, that you said, man, I would try to wow my dad, or I became somebody who needs to wow and deliver these outcomes, because what I really wanted was attention from him. And if you were to think, where do you think attention would fit on a heart, soul, mind, strength framework? Where do you think attention would be?
Heart.
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 So when you need attention, it's to be seen and connected to. And it's in the heart of God that we feel most connected and seen and valued. It's the community of God. It's the connection. And so you're going, man, I want the connection of this person in my life.
Yeah.
I'm going to go out and wow him. Well, where do you think wow is? Strength.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look at me, Dad, I'm winning. Look at me, I'm winning. Do you love me? So now your activity, I'll tell you this, a wounded heart is a great motivator for someone to get stuff done. Because you're consistently proving in the strength, look at my outcomes. Look at my outcomes. Don't you love me? Like, you see me, right? Give me the attention. Oh, I don't have the attention. Okay, let me go do better. So I run back out, and then I work harder, and I think smarter, and then I keep trying to deliver outcomes because I want your attention.
And our culture, wouldn't you guys agree, absolutely doesn't just promote it, but rewards it.
Oh, it's a payoff.
In athletics, in any kind of industry, if you're, it doesn't matter how long you're working, if you're like winning in that space, making more money, producing more widgets, getting it done, everybody's going, yes, you're doing it.
Yeah.
What I love about what you said about this integration is that in some of those areas, I can picture in my mind leading areas where I've pulled back and I've reduced my lifestyle to accommodate a fear. So for instance, if I want to get on the plane and I say, well, I don't have a fear of flying. Well, when was the last time you got on a plane? Oh, about 20 years ago, but I don't have a fear of flying because I've reduced my life, but I'll take a train. Yeah. But I've reduced no, I actually love to fly. I haven't since COVID, but the idea is that you change, you could be so much more as a leader if you embrace the full picture of the 4 quadrants that you're talking about, not reducing your lifestyle to accommodate your fear.
You become human.
You become human.
And I think I'm guilty of trying to fulfill my dad's prophetic words over me through his lifestyle, which was, wow the world, but don't be human.
Don't let him in.
Right. Well, I was told
never let him see you sweat.
I couldn't fear. I couldn't cry. I couldn't be weak. And yet, what a crime that is. And I think maybe, Rob, you're talking, I'd love to have you talk about what you're seeing the biggest challenges are in business today. But for me, I see a lot of people clamoring to fix heart and soul by just doing, it's like do better. I do see them trying to fix that. And it's hard to watch that, whether it's family or friends just trying to, it's the next job or more money. And in the spiritual realm, it's, well, you know what? I'm going to go to another church, or I'm going to do another Bible study. And it's where we've leveraged faith as just do better for God. When he didn't say do better. I already did it.
Yeah.
I'm done. You're done.
Yeah.
You're human. You're my child. You're loved. And I'm with you. And we just can't get that through our thick skulls. But talk about maybe some of the challenges you're facing, because you do this a lot with businesses and athletes.
So correct my theology. When Jesus was baptized, there was this sense that, was it like, you are my son, you are my beloved son?
No, God said, do better and read more books.
Yeah. Yeah, he didn't say that. I need to correct your theology.
He did. He said, you're my son.
You are my son.
Yeah.
Okay, and so you've heard this probably in different ways, shapes, or forms. But the inside out life, it sounds really good. But what we're talking about is, hey, Dad, look, I performed on the outside. Do you love me? Outside in. Inside out is, you're my boy. Oh, I'm your boy. You're my boy. Watch me go, Dad. Look at me go. I go out into the world. Some days I land it, and some days I don't. Good news is, the days that I don't land it out in the world, because the world is a tough place to be, guess where I can go home? I can go back to my house where I'm my boy. I'm my dad's boy. There was something about Jesus when he was baptized, and I still don't get it. Before he did all of his 3 years of ministry, there was an idea that he was baptized, and then it's almost like God says, you're my boy. So from the inside out, my boy, now you get to, on the outside, bring your outsides to the world, which will end in a very brutal death. But he could do that from the sense of belonging, whose am I, the blessing of a father and all of that. So that's called, that's the way I like to see the inside out life. Both accomplish an outcome, but in one situation, the outcome is trying to fix something on the inside, and the other one is the inside is informing what happens on the outside. Again, I'm not picking my favorite and telling you the heart and soul is all it is. God said 4 things. So I have to wrestle with the fact that in the business culture, mind and strength is over elevated. So often we go down into heart and soul and try to bring more of that. I can sometimes go into a church or a nonprofit and they spend so much time in heart and soul. They may not have the language to speak it clearly, but they're all feelers and they all just want to change the world. And then you go into the structure and strategy meeting and there's no structure that supports the heart to deliver the outcomes, but it's okay, they'll just keep fundraising.
It's not either or, it's both and.
Correct.
Right.
And so it's not rocket science. I wish I was inventing something new. I think I'm just wrestling with the words of God, the great commandment, and I'm going, how do I... That must have been something pretty important.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
So you have these 4 areas, and he asked about your biggest challenge. Specifically, what does it feel like when you're butting heads with the greatest issue to help a leader become integrated the way you're talking about? What is the top barrier that you face with these leaders? If you can pinpoint maybe the biggest one.
I think when you imagine heart and soul, it's kind of below the line and it's inside and it's scary. And very few of us can honestly say that we feel very safe and secure with things we can't see and quite understand. So often we will, the biggest challenge we get is leaders being resistant to wanting to have insides because they don't want to go there. When Jeff told me to go into the sewer drain and face my life, I was like, no thanks. Remember I said that? I was like, no, because what for? So the biggest resistance is helping people. You can't force them, and I don't inspire or compel them because that's not really true, is you invite them on a path, which is why pain is the great motivator. When my wife is sitting down in front of me and something in my head says, this is pretty bad, she misses you and you are disconnected from her and yourself, I was ready to go down there. But it took a pain point in my life. And when Jeff said, hey, go take another lap, you're young enough, you could re-up your coping mechanisms. We can do that at any stage of our life. You could be 65 years old and say, you know what, my grandkids just, they seem pretty lonely with me, or my kids are mad at me. I'm just going to ride this off for another 10, 15 years into the sunset.
Yeah.
It's like what they don't want to do is go below the line. So there's this idea of, I don't know what's down there. I don't want to go down there. So the biggest resistance we have with leaders is trying to invite leaders who don't think they need to change. And so we don't. That's the difference with Jack and I. We just sit patiently and pay attention to ourselves and those that come to those places.
Talk about how important a community, or and steal your words, Ryan, an ecosystem. But let's maybe define that as a community of people. And I think, Rob, you've used trust circles, environments where there's a high level of trust, but it's other people. Because I would say top leaders, even like myself, top pastors, think, oh, you know what? I'll just hire you, Rob. Can you and I just do this? And actually, that could be a good start, but there's a limitation, right?
Yeah.
Somewhere this has to find its way in a culture of people.
Yeah. Was that a question?
Kind of.
It moved me.
It did? It did?
Yeah.
It hit your heart?
No,
minded straight.
it confused my mind.
There's something about you
Wait,
doing the work that invites people into creating that ecosystem that says, I like what they have. I want to be invited into that ecosystem or that group. And I want to do the work too, because I like what I see.
But maybe what I'm trying to ask then is, do you see a lot of leaders don't want to go there with a group of people?
So often in the corporate space, again, I keep bouncing back between church and corporate world, and some of it's the same and some of it's definitely not. But in the corporate space, we've created a paradigm where it's a pyramid, right? The higher you get to the top, the more lonely you are, because you can't be human. You have to be closer to God. So heaven forbid you're a human, because you're not what we thought we were giving our lives to. And so there is an isolated sense up there. Interpersonal neurobiology is a field that's been growing over the last few years, and it sounds real fancy, and it is real fancy, but it's studying the nature of how the brain changes within the context of community. And his name is crossing my mind right now, but he's really the gentleman that a lot of this work is based on, and forgive me if he ever listens to this. But that being said, the gist of it is this, that people most change within the context of community. So your brain is rewired where I can say, this is who I am, and you go, yeah, I'm that too. And then I go, you're like me, different story, same ingredients, different, okay, wow. How did you navigate that? And so we're all helping each other. Community helps each other. The problem is, the bigger the community gets, the more impersonal it gets. So if I'm sitting in a conference with 5,000 people, I'm learning some great things, but and sometimes the breakout groups just aren't sufficient enough to take that information to deepen it. So then I sit with 3 people and I go, hey, this person, Rob just said that his wife was really lonely with him. Okay. There's no real teaching there. Where does that take you, Troy? Where does that take you? And the 3 of us sit down and we talk about how our relationships are lonely, those we're lonely with and those that are lonely with us.
Yeah.
And then somewhere in that, we lean into each other, and before we know it, we're more connected, we feel more safe, we feel more attached, and then we start to get rewired to go, maybe this is a safe place, I can bring more of who I am, because I really like what just happened here.
Yeah, I get freaked out. Every time you tell a story about Natalie, I go, uh-oh, I got to ask Trish, are you lonely with me? Please don't be lonely with me. Like I want to ask her, and
it's provoking questions though that you wouldn't necessarily think about.
But it's not even just a question for my mind. I feel fear.
Yeah,
when it says that.
Which is why your second question right now was, please don't be.
Yeah.
So the first one wasn't really a question. So the first one sounded like a question, but it really wasn't. It was a setup to saying, you're not lonely with me, are you? Which isn't a question. You're like, no, I'm fine, right?
I'm pretty good at that.
And again, the way you ask those questions is beautiful, because you told the truth about it. It's actually based in fear. So the fear will say, you're not lonely with me, are you? Whereas if I can hold the tension and know that I am afraid, God, I need you. Can I rest in the shelter of your wing, that, dear Lord, you made me beautiful, but I'm also just not enough in some ways. How do you feel with me? Are you okay with me? Because if the answer has to just be yes, then you're not really in a relationship. If the answer is yes, no, or maybe, well, now we're starting to have a relationship. And the problem is, if every time you say no, I get angry at you, then you'll just always say yes.
So we condition people by our responses.
Exactly.
Yeah. You know where I go with this, Ryan, as teachers, as pastors, we get up every week, and Rob and I have talked about this, but I feel like the American church, the westernized concept of church is we make people aware of God, we keep teaching them more knowledge about God, and then go do stuff for God. And that cycle just keeps happening over and over. And there isn't really an opportunity. And I don't, it's what we're talking about, it's not a program. Hey, we're going to read a book about emotions. I mean, even Chip's work, which is really brilliant, still has to be somehow assimilated into my heart and soul.
Correct.
And the problem is if I just have it up here, I can tactically use it and abuse it, and it still never goes there, right? It's just more information. And I feel like in the spiritual community, gosh, it's tiring to just keep doing Sundays with more God information, and people are trying harder. People are trying to serve more, give more, do more, and it's just not hitting heart and soul.
It's exhausting to them.
Yeah.
And if you look at Jesus, they had a Middle Eastern mindset to walking with circles, cohort groups.
Yeah.
12. So the way they learned was, I do, follow with me, come with me. I'm going to do, you do, and let's talk about it.
I love that.
Let's get together and integrate mind, body.
Yeah.
How you doing in your soul care? Jesus telling the disciples, hey, boys, this is working out so well. One has major rage issues that surfaces in their group. The other one says, who's the greatest? They all get into these little discussions, and all he does is just give them promotion through the issues of the heart that are bubbling to the surface while they go change the world. But they did it not in a Western American sit down in the amphitheater, now I talk and give you, as Troy said, more information.
Yeah.
He was imparting who he was into them. He was calling out the greatness in them, but he's doing integrated like you talked about.
I love that.
I think we need to take an offering now after that. I mean,
I was just preaching, man.
You just brought it.
Preaching. But Troy, you know what? That's our frustration. Like, we want people to be real.
Yeah.
We want them to be connected deeply.
So, but I will say this. So we've got to be careful, because this is not an anti-program message.
Right.
This is not an anti-action message. And you didn't say that. I'm saying we can so often revolt against, oh, church is a program. Church is not a program. I'm like, well, at some point, we have to just make sure we're circling all the quadrants. But a program would fit in the mind. How do we structure what's going on inside of our hearts and souls so it can produce the outcomes?
Yeah.
And so you start to look at the way God said to love him as a lens or a tool to be more effective holistically as a church. And so it's not like, again, this is my favorite, and so forth.
Right.
And so I just get very defensive of people that run great programs.
Right.
People
Don't
that
stop there.
The people that do great things for the community.
Yeah. But don't stop there. Aren't you saying?
Correct. All I'm saying is like, wow, look at you.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, hey, you're really terrible at truly connecting with people. You do small groups but it's really because you do them so that it fits the strategy or whatever you're doing. We do people really well. Hey, we should hang out more so that I can bring my gift of people and you bring your gift of structure. And now, as leaders, we're starting to look at each other as a team, not as enemies. Then there's someone down in the soul, and I always talk about the soul. I avoid it like the plague because my wife is so comfortable in the soul, and I just get so afraid of the soul. The heart, I'm feeling more and more comfortable with. But the soul, I'm always like, oh, it's so scary and mystical. And the soul is shy. And I'm trying to understand my soul. And I'm trying to understand the soul of the church and so forth. But that I can bring people that embody that speak that language and say, hey, come have a seat at the table. So if you want to be a great leader, all I'm saying is when you sit down at your next meeting, look around the table and see if you have heart, soul, mind, and strength represented by the people in the room that embody those qualities and are comfortable with that.
That's good.
Now, whatever you choose to do, whether it's change your culture, try to raise more money, try to run a great program, you're considering the whole.
Yeah, that's good.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I just want to clarify, I'm not, Troy, we have congregations and there's a lot of seats in those. I'm not waging war on the American way of doing church. I think what I was saying too was that embracing the tribal.
I'm not waging war, and I'm agreeing with both.
I love
of you.
that.
I think I'm I'm tired.
That's your age.
It is true. I'm tired of. I was just really going to the heart, and you just violated that.
I was trying.
Wait. How are you experiencing?
No, I was trying to get you out of your thought into the heart. Now you feel fear and anger. You're mad against me. You're hurt.
I feel interrupted.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it's. I don't want to give 10 more years. I told my staff this, to just standing on a stage and hoping transformation unfolds. I know it's really God revealing himself to people, but I think it's people being willing to go below and hit that soul and heart. Because I think, in our culture, I think we do really well at doing things for God and learning more about God. But I think that's the pull I feel. I think the attractive part of what we're talking about. I don't want to lose the chance, Rob, to say that, talk about Jack, introduce him a little bit, and then this book that you guys are writing. I'm excited about that, and you're about to finish a doctorate, so I have to call you Dr. Rob, which I'm going to struggle with, but I'm going to go with it.
Especially after my last comment.
Yeah, no kidding.
Do I need to ask for forgiveness?
No, I'm good.
Okay, we're good. Okay. All right. Jack has been such a great gift and mentor, and he's gone ahead in several ways. And
can you introduce him? You just keep saying Jack. There's a lot of Jacks in the world.
Jack Nicholson.
There you go.
Not the actor.
Okay.
Yeah, not the actor. You have to say that. Jack Nicholson, not the actor.
I know I have said that before. I said somebody, I'm going to Jack Nicholson. They're going, you can't handle the truth guy? I go, yeah, he's kind of that way, but he's not that personality.
Different kind of guy.
Yeah, so Jack's been a huge gift. Jack has worked around the country with a lot of senior leaders, a lot of big, medium, small churches, companies, organizations, and his life has been in the field of transformative change. And so I got grafted into his story and his life, and together, I'm a heart to strength guy. I'm full of fire and passion. Let's go. And Jack is soul to mind. He's deep, he's contemplative, he's calm and collected, and he structures and strategizes around that deeper sense of calling. So I make him move faster and louder, and he makes me pause longer with more intention.
It's beautiful. Beautiful.
So when Jack and I come to the table, he accesses the parts of who I am that are loud, and I access the part of who he is that is loud. And together, we're trying to get heart, soul, mind, and strength so that the decisions we do make are integrated.
So you've not written a new fix-it leadership book, which I love, kind of shape what you're writing and what you intend the purpose to be.
Yeah, and I'll make it real simple, but Jack and I have these 5 principles that we have gathered, aggregated, collected, which we really believe are biblical principles to a huge degree. And we believe that the principles themselves, if you learn them, are not enough. So we've created a sense of an outline to help you embody those principles, practice them. And if you install those principles, our book is called The Human Operating System, Recovering the Heart and Soul of Your Leadership. So we're overemphasizing heart and soul because the book is written to a mainstream business audience. We work with a lot of corporations and companies. And so we're able to bring the idea of the Great Commandment, the way humans are designed, and bring that into a corporate environment. And if I can just tell you how the lights go on, where you walk into a room with a corporate space, and I can draw a heart, soul, mind, strength on the ground, and I'll say, all right, which of these quadrants do you operate the most out of?
Oh, gosh.
That's all I have to say, and they'll go stand in the quadrant. And then I'll say, all right, which quadrant should you be operating out of? And then they'll switch quadrants. All right, what's missing on your team? And you can see it, wherever the holes are. And it's just so simple. And then we're able to take them through that. So we write about these 5 principles. The book is not a pop culture business book, make you feel good. Here are like 10 principles to be a better leader. Go, 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 rah, rah. It's a little more meaty, but we try to keep it shy of academic. Jack and I can be a little bit tediously boring. Yeah. And so we love what we love, and we love to learn. So we wanted to bring it into the field of allowing teams and organizations and leaders to see these 5 principles and then choose the ones that they're willing to install into their life and into their leadership. I'm very, very excited about it. And I hope you will be too.
I will. You kidding?
Yeah, that'd be great.
I'm really enjoying what I'm hearing here. So I'm going to ask for a vulnerable moment.
Yeah.
Your fails. We talk a lot about our fails.
Yeah.
Any particular fail that you learned from that has really helped galvanize this message for you?
So I would say the first one I shared, when your wife sits you down and tells
That's a big
you
one.
she's lonely with you.
That's a life altering.
That's a bit of a sucker punch.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I thought I was awesome. I'm doing well. Like how awesome this house is. We're killing it. This is not enough. So that was a moment of fail that propelled me to feel the pain that I needed to go on the journey.
Yeah.
I had another fail that I'll tell you about real quick. Is just real casually, because it's such an easygoing life event. But probably just over 2 years, just coming up on 2 years ago, I was running a leadership cohort. So sometimes I always say sometimes change gnaws at you and eventually you do something about it. Or sometimes change finds you. It's like a forced change. This is a story of a failure that was forced on me. Okay. And it's forever changed me and still has to this moment. About 2 years ago, I was running a leadership cohort, had probably 14 guys in my house. Jack was there. We were running this group. And unfortunately, I do not remember it. They left my house at about 1 o'clock, and by about 2 o'clock, I was apparently delirious. I was on the same 2-minute loop, Groundhog Day. And my wife was in Southern California at the time, called just to check in, and apparently I answered the phone, and somehow she realized pretty quickly something was really wrong with me. And apparently I just kept repeating myself. I kept going, same 2 minutes, start again. And so ambulances rush. Apparently I was meant to be looking after my kids, and people rush over and everything. And I'm just sitting there. Apparently they find me at my house, and I'm just dazed and I'm confused and I'm just repeating myself. And so I end up in the hospital, and I've got, I love that moment. There's a couple photos about it, but again, I don't remember any of this. I have 3 days that I do not remember. And so I've recounted some of the stories to the best that I can, and some of them are inappropriate for this podcast, and some of them are really funny and awesome, because there's just a lot happening. But there was just these men that gathered in my room.
That's a cool picture.
And they stood around there, and they listened to me do the same 2 minutes for days. And what had happened is I had a stroke. I had 5 strokes, actually. They tattoo them on your brain. I have a few tattoos, but apparently these are pretty cool. They're on your brain for the rest of your life. And I'd had 5 strokes. And what had happened is I had injured my neck. And so the type of stroke that I'd injured my neck. My neck had tried to heal, formed the blood clots. The blood clots got dislodged, and they went to my brain and kind of did whatever they do up there. So normal strokes, but an unusual situation. They call it like the young people's stroke. There's some people in their 20s or 50, in their teens or whatever. It's injury related. Couldn't have created it. Didn't know how to stop it. Didn't know it. And long and short of it, put me in a hospital. And I lost a lot of capacity. My eyesight was gone. It was hard for me to see properly. I could see, but it was very bizarre. I was awake for a few hours a day. Right side of my body was numb, and all these other things that were going on with me. And then they discharged me a couple days later with aspirin. And they're like, all right, keep your blood thin.
Oh, gosh.
Hopefully your neck will heal. Come back in 3 months. If it heals, you should be good. Like, wait, what? So finally, thankfully, my memory came back, and some of those things did come back. But it took me out of the game, and I was awake for a couple hours a day for months. And so I went from a highly competent running a leadership cohort group. Look at me. Aren't I amazing? I can
Warrior.
just power up. I can do what I need to do. I can go. Oh my gosh, I'm so self-sufficient, Like, God, you're awesome. I really need you, but just not yet. I'm good for now. And then all of a sudden I'm in the hospital, and I don't even know who I am and where I've been. So that's a dramatic life moment.
Very scary.
That took me out of it. It wasn't that scary for me because I don't remember it, but it was terrifying for everyone else.
Yeah.
So my wife finally came home, and my friends, and they're all going, oh gosh, my kids were terrified. Eventually I was terrified because I realized that something bad had really happened, and I was hoping that the symptoms would come or go, and had no idea. So I got to walk in here today. I slowed down my doctorate. I slowed down a few things. Life got a little harder, and my hours of productivity have shrunk, and all those things, and I'm gaining momentum. But I'll tell you this, it was a moment where it's like, I actually think that moment saved me. And now I'm not trying to rose color lens, but God works things all for the good. And that is true to some degree. And the theologians, you guys can help me probably with that. But I think so often we use that to make light of a hard situation.
Right.
But I'll tell you this. The book Halftime and other books like that are all about the second half of your life, and depending on what style of book you read. And I just realized that I can't do the second half of my life the way I did the first one. And I think the stroke created a baptism into death. And it created this, it actually took away my ability to execute and power up way more than anything else in my life. And I had people feeding me, bringing me, bringing me food just to come sit with me. And I'd never felt so weak and so vulnerable in all my life for months and months and months and months. And there's still times and there's still days that I have to still today I'll have to look at a moment and go, hey, I'm not okay. I need to go lie down. I need to catch up. Like I just don't have what it takes. And so what that did was I looked at that moment and I said, man, this has shaped me and changed me. And I think it's given me the gift to go into my years I call myself a baby king. You know, I'm coming out of the warrior years as a man, like, yeah, I got this. What do you need me to do? Just point me to the battle. Like, you love me, right? Look at me go. And now I'm starting to learn, God, how can I build a part of your kingdom on earth? How can I serve you? And God is saying, in your weakness, I am strong. And I'm going, yeah, I got that one. Like, the stroke has helped me realize that I truly need you, God. So I am hoping, I have not nailed it, check in with me in a few years, but I'm hoping that what this moment has done, this moment of failure, I failed as a human, like my body failed me, that out of my insides will become a more pure, intentional version of who Rob is as I express myself out in the world. Because today I had 6 hours of day. I didn't have 12 like I used to. So now I'm going, how do I spend my 6 hours with more intention? And then how do I check in with how sad and afraid I am because I couldn't get the other 6 hours done? And is it still okay that I wasn't enough? Hey, God, are you good with me? I did the best I could today, and it just may have not been enough, but is that okay?
Man, that speaks, I'm sure, to so many leaders out there who maybe they're sitting in their office, Troy, maybe they're watching this and going, I don't know how to even articulate what he just said, but I felt everything he just said.
Well, and that's our hope. And I know we're reaching a limit here where he's gonna have to take a nap right now because we've worked him hard. Are you
patronizing me
a little bit because I love you, but we've worked hard today, and I get
payback from the previous comment.
Yeah, totally. Man, thank you, Rob. Man, I love you, brother. Love your work. I can't wait. Not just to read the book because I have a manuscript, but like in the hardcover.
Yeah.
But I think to see how that can really affect both the business sector and church, but not from a production standpoint, more that people find that integration you're talking about. So I'm pretty excited about that. And Ryan, I was glad for you to meet this guy.
Oh, he's fantastic. I love your message. And I'll be talking to probably our team a little bit about some of what I heard from you. Troy, we learn every week. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
Well, friends, thank you for watching. If you're listening, thanks for listening. Lead Wisco. We'll be back, I'm sure, very soon. Take care.
Hey, everyone. Thanks so much for listening today. We hope you learned from Rob some ways that you can recover the heart and soul of your leadership to become a more integrated and transformative leader. Here are some ways that you can connect with Rob and Transformed Leader. If this episode was helpful to you, we'd be so grateful if you subscribed or followed us, left us a review, or shared our podcast with someone you think may benefit from it. If you're looking for more leadership content, check out our social media. We post snippets of these episodes, leadership development resources, and more. If there's someone you think would be a great guest for us to talk to, message us on social media or send us an email at leadwisco@gbcc.me. Thanks for listening.